Before I get started with today's episode, I just want to quickly apologize for the lack of interesting visuals this week. I've been preoccupied with some real-life bullshit lately, and I haven't had much time for YouTube. Anyway, in episode 34 I talked about the new level sync feature in Star Wars The Old Republic, a system that automatically scales down a character's level so that it matches the character's current environment. Basically, I said level sync should be optional, not forced upon the player base against their will. This prompted a discussion that eventually led to a viewer asking, when is it fun to be a vastly higher level than the content you're experiencing? I'm going to answer that question right now. Sort of. See, I'm going to list all the reasons I sometimes take my high-level characters into low-level zones, but they're not exclusively for fun. Farming materials, for example, mining, herbing, foraging, whatever you choose to call it. Grabbing raw materials from the environment or killing enemies for trade skill supplies is sometimes a necessity. I'd rather spend 10 minutes grabbing what I need in a danger-free zone than spending 10 hours fighting my way through level-appropriate mobs to achieve the same goal. Either way, I'm not having fun. I'm grinding out materials as a chore. So it only makes sense that I want the experience to be as quick and painless as possible. Some of you might be wondering why a high-level character would even need low-level mats. Well, if I reach endgame and re-roll a profession from scratch, I don't want to be overly penalized for that, especially if I'm doing it in service of my guild. Or, because professions are never any fun to begin with, I like to gather materials on my main to power level trade skills on my alts. If developers ever find a way to make professions entertaining, then I'll probably change my tune. But until then, I see no reason to avoid cutting corners whenever possible. Speaking of alts, I sometimes like to craft gear for alts before I level them through the world. Constructing those pieces of gear always takes tons of low-level materials. Or, since most MMOs have a transmog feature now, I might want to craft outdated gear just for the aesthetics. Either way, old-world ingredients are still valuable in certain situations, and I'm not always eager to pay overinflated auction house prices to acquire them. I also stomp my way through low-level content to gain reputations with long-since outdated factions. I like having access to every quartermaster's full inventory, so I can purchase things like recipes, gear, mounts, and so on. I'm a completionist. I like owning everything in-game. Collecting stuff is sort of a compulsion for me. But there are a couple problems with this overall. 1, I don't have an infinite amount of time to play these games. 2, more importantly, the devs aren't giving me any extra incentive to want this process to be difficult or time-consuming. If I overpower the content, but the rewards are still accessible to me, then I'm going to take that shortcut. The path of least resistance will win every time. And 3, if I'm forcibly downscaled to match my environment, then that makes group content like dungeons and raids impossible to solo. Now, because I'm a big fat casual crybaby, that makes me really sad. I actually do enjoy one-shotting once high-level mobs in these types of situations. But I'm not entirely against the devs finding other ways to make this old content relevant again. I'm going to do something I don't often do these days, and that's highlight something Blizzard Entertainment recently did in a good way. Sort of. Their new Timewalking dungeon system isn't perfect by any means. I don't think the system should be limited to special weekends. I also think it would have just been better to give players the ability to downscale themselves to the desired level and then queue up for an appropriate dungeon. But those issues aside, I like how high-level players now have options. They can either face roll the old dungeon solo, or they can get downscaled and run in level-appropriate groups. And those groups get bonus currency rewards, as well as a chance to receive an exclusive mount, in recognition of their choice to play in hard mode. Oh, and just to make things perfectly clear, yes, I'm halfway praising Timewalking here, but I did just finish bashing it in my previous video. I still think it sucks, mainly because it's being upheld now, today, as new content. Blizzard's selling it as a reason to remain a paying subscriber in an expansion they've long since abandoned. Thinking of it in terms of a meal, it would have made a decent side dish, but it's certainly not a main course. Anyway, I play video games for entertainment, but my playstyle changes based on my mood. Sometimes I crave challenge, and sometimes I just want to relax. Sometimes I want my skills to be tested, and other times I don't. I'm looking into a lot of different MMOs right now. I'm experiencing tons of new content I've never seen before. It's interesting to go exploring through all these different worlds in search of hard to reach spots or hidden Easter eggs. It's sometimes more enjoyable to do this without having to worry about getting killed by random enemies. I like being able to log online whenever I'm sick or hungover and focus my efforts on simple affairs, like jumping puzzles or earning meager achievements. I like knowing that not every location outside my capital city is dangerous beyond measure. I can lower my guard, go complete a few low-level quests, and focus on reading the stories instead of fearing for dear life. I like having a wealth of options, and that's a big reason why I spoke against level sync in the first place. I value freedom of choice, multiple tiers of difficulty, and keeping the rewards I've earned. Scoring experience increases my character's level. The higher that level goes, the more power my character obtains. I should be the one who decides how that power gets used, because it belongs to me. Developers should never strip rewards or progress away from any players, unless they're openly exploiting game mechanics and breaking the rules. If the developers are smart, they'll think of creative ways to incentivize players to engage in difficult content more often. So I think that pretty much covers all my thoughts on the subject. As always, if you agree or disagree with anything I've said, I'd love to read your comments, so be sure to leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.